Production of Kansas City Week in Review is made possible through the generous support of Dave and Jamie Cummings, Smithfield Foods, Haas and Wilkerson Insurance, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
Marking 100 years of America's entry into World War I. But when the eyes of the nation were supposed to be on Kansas City, why did so few national dignitaries bother to show up? Plus, saying yes to everything at the polls in Kansas City. A closer look at your election choices and where Kansas City goes next. McCaskill votes no. Will it cost her? And we have the latest from Kansas, from flat tax to Medicaid expansion. Welcome, everyone. I'm Nick Haynes, and thank you for joining us again on the program that connects the dots on the news of the week in this place we call home. Dissecting those stories this week from the Kansas City Star, chief political reporter Brian Lowry, and Star editorial page editor Colleen Nelson. From the world of television news, investigative reporter Stacey Cameron, and from 41 Action News, Brian Abel. Conventional wisdom says the public distrusts government, hates taxes, and is disillusioned with political leaders. So why on Tuesday did voters in Kansas City say yes to pretty much everything on the ballot?
I can't tell you how proud I am of the people of this city for stepping up and making a hard decision to do the right thing for this city.
Mayor Sly James responding on 41 Action News there to the fact that more than 60% of voters said yes to increasing their property taxes to fund all three infrastructure questions on the ballot. They also backed a sales tax hike to fund economic development on Kansas City's east side and a measure reducing penalties for marijuana possession won more than 70% support. So what do these election results tell us this week about the Kansas City electorate, Brian?
It tells us that, hey, this was something tangible and something that they were very much in favor of. Infrastructure is not sexy, right? And that was one of the big things that Mayor James, when he was doing this push throughout this campaign, was saying that it's not sexy, but it's necessary. And for all of us that have driven on the roads, have had to avoid a pothole, it's tangible. It's something that we know is a problem. And so it's them, the voters, saying yes.
Okay, not sexy. In fact, we're told that infrastructure is a boring topic, yet turnout far exceeded expectations, with almost twice as many people heading to the polls on Tuesday than voted for mayor last year. Could that have been because of all the Royals and Sporting KC players pushing people to the polls to endorse the animal shelter? Or could it be because of gestures like this one, tweeted out by Brian Lowry from the Thou Mayest coffee shop in the Crossroads? Free high fives, Brian, to anyone with an I voted sticker?
I don't know how many people the high fives got to go out to the polls, but if it got at least one, then I'm happy about it. But I think the coffee shop, which is around the corner from the Star, really deserves the credit. I think it goes to what Brian said, which is that people drive every day. They know how good or how poor their streets are. And that's something that if they want fixed, they're going to vote to do it. Look at the national level. Some of President Trump's biggest promises have been that we're going to build roads and we're going to build bridges and we're going to build things again. This is something that I think does resonate with voters. If you say we're going to use your money to do this, if you're specific about we are going to improve your city this way, and to the mayor's credit, I think he did manage to do that in this campaign.
But it wasn't just a bond election or we get these improvements. You had to dip into your own pocketbook, though, Colleen, and actually part with your own money, tax money, to make this happen.
That's right. It's a fairly remarkable outcome because voters approved 4 different tax increases for themselves. 3 property tax increases that were tied to the bond package, and then a separate sales tax increase that will only go to the east side. And so I don't think we should underestimate what a heavy lift it was to get that passed. And in many ways, I think this was a referendum on city leaders. I mean, they made Sly James the face of this, with the exception of the TV commercial that you referenced with Royals players and puppies. We did have Royals players and puppies to hang on to, but they put Sly James out there, and he really kind of staked his reputation on this, and voters gave Sly James a thumbs up.
Was this a referendum on Sly James?
Well,
Stacey?
I think even before Mayor Sly James came into office, infrastructure has been a big problem here, and the mayor since coming into office has touted that, and he's tied it to economic development largely, to say that if we don't rebuild our infrastructure here, we won't get new businesses in town, we won't continue to see what we've seen in the Power and Light and other areas now in the Crossroads. So in some sense, I think it was a referendum on Mayor Sly James. He threw out a lot of political capital. Now the question turns is, will he be able to get his next big pet project through to voters, and that's going to be the airport up north. So I think Sly had a big part to play in this too, and I think, you know, the puppy and the players from the Royals, and not to downplay that, but look, that one, I think most of us who followed this, or at least I did, knew that part of the referendum would go through that bond issue, and I think that helped carry the other two over the line as well.
Does this embolden then city leaders to move fast now then, Brian, on a new single terminal at KCI Airport?
It at least gives them the opportunity. It gives them the idea that Kansas City residents are amenable to these types of projects, these types of big projects. They probably should move quickly. While this is still in the air.
Brian?
Well, I think that there's something that's to be said for a lack of opposition, strong opposition, paid for opposition in this particular election. Will that still be the case when we talk about KCI, when we talk about a streetcar authority? And as we know, at least with a streetcar authority, that's a no.
Okay, so you talk about the streetcar because that's an issue now that's already moving forward, the expansion of the streetcar line. This week, the first step in expanding the 2-mile line from Union Station down to the plaza and onto UMKC begins. Registered voters living along the proposed route could begin applying for the official ballots this week that are part of the mail-in election to decide whether the streetcar is extended. Are there stumbling blocks, though, to this happening? Isn't there a measure on the ballot this August to require a full public vote before any money can be spent on streetcar expansion, Colleen?
Well, there definitely are stumbling blocks, and the measure on the August ballot is one which requires citywide vote, as you said, and then there's another measure on the August ballot that is a different streetcar expansion. And so I think a key stumbling block is just voter confusion. Are we expanding the streetcar? Are we retrenching and requiring a citywide vote? And are all of these different proposals going to just kind of cancel each other out? And so I think voters could be confused by dueling proposals.
And also, the original streetcar line, Brian Lowry, was funded in large part by federal funds, a Tiger grant that is now on the chopping block nationally under the Trump administration. Can the city even rely on the federal slice of dollars to make this happen?
We're going to have to see what happens at the federal level. If those Tiger funds are not available, I think it makes it tougher to do it only through local funds for sure. I would also say your support for the streetcar is directly proportional to whether or not you live along that line. And I say that as a person who lives in Quality Hill and can walk to the streetcar.
But not everybody would have a chance to vote for that streetcar. You'd have to be along the line itself, Brian.
Absolutely. But there's something that's really surprised me about the way that the streetcar has come to fruition. And one is, you go downtown, if you don't live in downtown, like myself, you go downtown, I am so amazed at how many people on the weekends are on that thing. And I think that you've seen in this case, a case where, okay, we built something and now we're seeing some results. And that was the opposition with this election on the infrastructure. One of those questions were, why don't we take different step process, show voters a little something, and then we can move forward in different phases? That's exactly what's happening here, it seems like.
So does that melt away some of the negativity? Because, as Brian points out, it has been popular downtown. In fact, this weekend, they're expanding Sunday hours now because so many people are riding it, and they're looking to add now 2 more streetcars to the 4 they already have.
Well, it's popular along the line, but let's not forget when we first voted this in, it's going to be much like this election that's coming up. It's a vote election. People aren't going to actually go to their precincts. They're going to mail in their votes. And it was only taxing between that special district. They've purposefully laid this off of normal election days because if you take the city as a citywide whole, there is opposition to the streetcar line. There's been ridicule of the streetcar line ever since then. So I think politically, the James administration has made these mail-in votes the first 2 rounds because they know that along the streetcar line, it's very popular for people who don't pay for it in Johnson County and Lee Summit and places like that. It's very popular when you come in, but for other people in the city, not so much.
I don't want to neglect the marijuana issue that was on the ballot. What about that? That passed overwhelmingly, more than 70% of the voters saying yes. How will that now be viewed? Will this embolden marijuana supporters to now speed up efforts to legalize pot in Missouri and possibly even in Kansas? Or will Missouri lawmakers see this vote now work on a bill to prevent it from taking effect like they have with the minimum wage law, Brian?
I think you could see some opposition. One thing to remember is at the federal level, Jeff Sessions, the new Attorney General, is very opposed to marijuana legalization, and states that have already legalized are uncertain about where they stand now with the federal government. And so it would not be out of the realm of possibility that you see Missouri lawmakers from other parts of the state look to curtail this a little bit.
Should we read too much into this election, though, in terms of its ramifications for other possible votes in either Kansas or Missouri, Colleen?
Well, I think it's important. I think that the proponents perhaps now are kind of kicking themselves, wondering perhaps we should have asked for more, because there wasn't an organized campaign here. This was just kind of a gut reaction from voters, and it was the biggest winner on the ballot. It was 71% of voters approved this, and so I think that if lawmakers are inclined in Jefferson City or on the federal level to take action on this, they should take a hard look at results like this, because it's clear that voters are far ahead of where many lawmakers are on this issue, and they're moving quickly to say we should change marijuana laws.
And to add to that, I think absolutely that there's that possibility. When I was talking to voters at the polls on Tuesday, some of them were saying, this is exactly what I'm hoping for, that's why I'm voting, because I want this to be a stepping stone to that next level for marijuana. So absolutely it's a possibility.
50% of our audience lives in Kansas, and lots of stuff happening there too this week. Kansas is pretty much a flat state. Is it also about to become a flat tax state? Wouldn't it be fairer and simpler if everyone paid the same? This week, Kansas Governor Sam Brownback threw his weight behind a proposal to impose a flat income tax rate of 4.6% on Kansans. That bill would also end what some have complained has been an unfair business tax exemption for limited liability companies. The state is facing projected budget shortfalls of more than $1 billion. Does a flat tax solve that problem, Brian Lowry?
I'm going to hold off on saying what solves the problem, since I need to be objective in covering this. But I will say this. There were lawmakers who support the concept of a flat tax who were mad that the governor came out in favor of it, because right now he's not very popular, and that actually, some would argue, hurts them when the governor is pushing this idea. Really, one of the big debates that we have is whether to move to the flat tax or whether to actually create 3 brackets. Kansas had 3 brackets prior to Governor Brownback. He collapsed it to 2. There is a large coalition of lawmakers that want to restore the 3rd bracket, to have an upper bracket that's taxed at a higher level than the other 2. And so that's going to be a debate that continues to play out, whether there's one tax that everyone pays, which would mean an increase for the lowest earning Kansans, or whether there's going to be 3 different taxes based on your
As we are ending this week, though there are 8 states that currently have a flat tax, including Illinois, Michigan, where you come from, Brian. They are among the states that have it. Is it fair to say that this flat tax idea is dead at this moment in time in Topeka?
Nothing's ever dead in Topeka. Things resurface all the time. They come into amendments. But it's certainly not thriving. It only got 3 votes of the 40-member Kansas Senate. I'd say it does not look very viable right now.
Okay, let's talk about another issue then in terms of what is dead and what isn't. Last week, while we were hosting our pre-election show, Kansas lawmakers did something that was considered unthinkable for years. They passed Medicaid expansion 7 years after the Affordable Care Act went into effect, sending the bill to Governor Brownback, who, guess what, immediately vetoed it. And this week, an effort to override that veto fails. It would have provided health insurance for nearly 150,000 Kansans who earn too much for the current Medicaid program, but earn too little to afford coverage on the health insurance exchange. Is this now the end of that issue?
As the former Kansas State House reporter, I'll field this one. This was the culmination of a long push of work from healthcare advocates to get this passed. And they got it passed by a wide margin. The problem is it's not veto-proof. And I think the governor has made it very clear he's not going to budge. You saw the override fall a few votes short in the House. It's unlikely that they can flip those remaining votes. Unlike taxes, where there seems to be much more cohesion about what a broad number of lawmakers want, this is still a tough vote for a lot of Republican lawmakers. While a lot of moderate Republicans and a lot of rural Republicans are backing it, it's still a tough vote to back something that's so closely associated with Obamacare.
Well, Colleen, I was noticing this actual story got quite a bit of play nationally. I love to see that when you see local stories making a national play. But is that because no other state is even bothering to try and expand Medicaid under this new Trump administration?
Well, I think that's part of it. I mean, this obviously comes at a moment when lawmakers in D.C. are contemplating whether they might dismantle Obamacare, and if that happened, the Medicaid question might be moot because they could kind of blow up the whole system. But I think also the reason this got some national attention is because if you asked people what kind of looking at the entire political landscape, which state would be the least likely in the country to expand Medicaid, a lot of people would say Kansas, just by virtue of the fact that Sam Brownback is the governor. And you saw the New Yorker write about the moderates taking over Kansas and said, you know, they described Kansas as the most extreme experiment in conservatism in the country. And so we seemed like a very unlikely destination for Medicaid expansion. The fact that not only did a majority of Democrats vote for this, but a majority of Republicans did was notable.
Stacey.
Well, and I think that's true. Look, the veto override only failed by 3 votes. And 4 years ago, 6 years ago, this was unthinkable to see an expansion. When Brownback came into office, the changes that he did with CanCare were overwhelmingly popular in his own constituency and at the State House, but it's not anymore. 150,000 people would have had expanded health care in Kansas had this happened. And Senate Democrats and moderate Republicans are promising that this will be revisited. If Brownback is to go off to Washington at some point and serve under a Trump administration, I think that's one of the first order of businesses they'll look to see, because there's a good chance then there wouldn't be that veto.
To push back on that for a second, I think it gets tougher. Lieutenant Governor Jeff Colyer has been even more vehemently against Medicaid expansion than Brownback. He's the one who Brownback has largely deferred to on health care policies, the main architect of the privatization of Medicaid in Kansas. So avoiding, if Colyer becomes governor, it still is a very tough sell. It's the difficulty about getting those extra votes to override. I don't think it happens without an override.
And I think that what's happened in the last couple of months at the Capitol has been really interesting, because when you take a look, there was this big focus on moderate Republicans coming in and changing the dynamic. We've had a couple of bills go to the Governor Brownback's desk now. He's vetoed them. And there's still not that coalition in order to push back on that. So the question is this moderate Republican wave effective at this point? And that's something that I think we still have to examine moving forward.
What do you think of that, Brian?
One thing I don't want to undersell is the fact that the Democrats are a major part of this coalition. A lot of the national articles overlook that. But the key is that the reason those moderates have any power is because they can count on the Democrats to vote a certain way. So the question becomes, do the moderates hold strong, and can they flip a few people who would be on the fence between conservative and moderate to vote their way? Because right now you don't have that 2/3 majority. You are just shy in the House and Senate to have 2/3 on everything.
Okay, well, let's talk about Democrats, and actually the most important Democrat, the most powerful Democrat in the state of Missouri, Missouri Senator Claire McCaskill, who is feeling the heat this week.
Tell Senator Claire McCaskill to protect our rights. Confirm Gorsuch now.
I have a big problem with refusing to do your job.
Tell Senator McCaskill Judge Gorsuch deserves her vote.
Tell Senator McCaskill, don't let us down again. Vote to confirm Judge Neil Gorsuch.
Missouri's Democratic Senator drawing ire from a slew of groups as she votes to oppose Supreme Court Justice nominee Neil Gorsuch. Her no vote comes even after McCaskill acknowledged in a leaked audio recording with Democratic donors that blocking Gorsuch would be detrimental to Democrats in 2018. Let's not forget Donald Trump won Missouri by 19 points. If McCaskill knows blocking Gorsuch will be detrimental to Democrats, will her no vote cost her when she runs for re-election next year, Colleen?
Well, it was a political calculation on some level for her to decide to vote no, and she was getting pressure from conservative groups running commercials like we just saw, but also she stared right in the face of what Democratic groups, liberal groups, were saying they would do to her if she voted yes. And so when the NRA says you should vote no, they're not going to help her in her re-election bid, even if she supports Gorsuch. But when liberal groups say we won't support you, we won't help you in your re-election bid, if you support Gorsuch. That applies some pressure there. So she will have to answer to voters for that. She has a steep hill in her re-election bid, but there were some political realities she had to contend with.
And that was just a small slither, Brian, of the ads. In fact, they were running, I think, on every single newscast that you have on Channel 41 News.
Which I have nothing to do with.
Absolutely.
Let's just put that out there. But stunning lack of humanity was the phrase that she used. That is strong verbiage when saying that that's why you're not going to vote. So it had nothing to do with, at least if you base it on that, Garland's confirmation or lack thereof, right? It was a principled decision.
But does the Star's chief political reporter, though, believe this does cost Claire McCaskill when she runs for re-election next year?
One fascinating thing is she was acutely aware of the pitfalls of this. It really was kind of a no-win situation. If you vote to confirm, you anger your base. If you filibuster, you give fuel to the opposition. There really wasn't a win, and that was actually one thing she warned the Democratic voters, and she was completely correct that if we do filibuster Gorsuch, they're going to get rid of the filibuster, which is exactly what they did. I think it's noteworthy that she did not say how she was going to vote until the tape came out. Now, McCaskill's people may push back on me noting that, but it was a day after the Star released the audio that that she came out and said, I'm going to vote.
Stacey.
Right, and at that point, I mean, for Claire, there were a lot of liberal special interest groups that were threatening not to help fund her re-election bid. So Claire found herself in a political vice where, yes, she's going to pay to some segment of voters for voting against this Supreme Court nomination. But if she did vote for him, then she was going to lose millions of dollars that she's going to need for this. So in the end, I think it came down to Claire looking, my best alternative is to make sure I get that money and try to sway voters on other issues besides this.
Has any Republican said they are actually going to run against her, though, next year?
We may have an announcement next week. I don't want to get ahead of myself.
Please get ahead of yourself.
What I would say is that it's pretty clear that several members of the congressional delegation, members of the U.S. House, are at least weighing whether to run against McCaskill.
The first referendum on Donald Trump's performance in office comes on Tuesday in a special election in Kansas. It'll be the first congressional contest since the November election. This is for the Kansas 4th Congressional District seat centered around Wichita, which has been held by Mike Pompeo, who's now the CIA director. Take a look at these campaign ads.
I'm Ron Estes. After 8 years of Obama, America is weaker and the swamp is deeper than we thought. And now, the liberal activists are trying to steal this election by supporting a Bernie Sanders-backed lawyer because they know he will vote the way Pelosi tells him to.
I'm James Thompson, and I'm running for U.S. Congress. I'm a fighter, and I don't back down. I grew up in poverty and was even homeless as a teenager, but the opportunity to get a good education and serve in the U.S. Army changed my life. Things aren't working, no matter who's in charge. Our vets don't get the care they deserve, working families can't get a break, and it's time to change that.
No, that's not Missouri Governor Eric Greitens' brother with the sharpshooting skills. That's the Democrat. Civil rights attorney James Thompson, the Republican in the waders fighting alligators, is the current Kansas State Treasurer Ron Estes. This is a district, by the way, that has not been held by a Democrat in 22 years. Is there really anything to suggest that the outcome on Tuesday will be any different?
Not much.
No? Okay.
Not much.
We went through all of that?
But I will say there are a few slivers of hope for Democrats in that it is a special election. That means it will be a low turnout election, which makes it a little more of a wild card. And you see a few signs of concern from Republicans. You saw the Cook Political Report change this from a solidly Republican district to a likely Republican district. All of a sudden, national Republicans are funneling some money into this. And so you see some nervous signs from Republicans that maybe this is not a slam dunk.
And Nick, you mentioned, I mean, there has been a Democrat in that seat in 22 years, and only 3 times have Democrats held that seat. But this just goes to the changing times in Kansas. And because the base is usually the one in these small elections, I think it's going to be a much closer election than we would have thought years ago.
Talking to people back in Wichita, it sounds like Thompson is running a more active race. And that's one thing that the Thompson campaign is really hitting on is, where is Ron Estes? He hasn't gone to as many candidate forums. He hasn't gone to as many events. One reason is he probably doesn't have to. he's such a solid front runner that he will put himself at risk for gaffes.
Not to put words into your mouth, but I think he's running away from the alligators, and that's
right.
probably causing
Well,
him to work away
and then
from the
speaking of the alligators, Thompson has been trying to tie him to Governor Sam Brownback.
Okay.
And so it's an uphill battle, but it seems to have people thinking.
I do want to mention this. I know you want to say something here, but a big story this week. The eyes of the world were supposed to be on Kansas City this week as the nation marks 100 years since America entered World War I.
We pause, we reflect, and we remember.
This was not only an important event for American history, but for world history. So I feel honored to be here.
An excerpt from a report from Brian Abel at Channel 41. You know, we are fortunate to have the National World War I Museum and Memorial here in town. Organizers who've been planning this commemoration event for 4 years were hoping for a major array of world leaders, including the president and heads of states from European allied nations. President Trump was invited, but not only did he not come, the highest profile national political leader was the acting Secretary of the Army, Robert Speer. Why such little high-profile representation for such a historically significant event?
It's a great question that I don't have an easy answer to, Nick, unfortunately. You know, what was really surprising when I was there was all the security, right? And there was no plan B to back off that security if President Trump didn't show up. But then there was also a lot of empty seats at first. And when you're up there and you see all these white seats that, if we know anything from the election or from the inauguration day, white seats are a big deal, right? And so a lot of it played with that unpredictable weather, of course. You know, organizers, they were telling me that there was a lot of schools that had canceled, didn't come because they weren't sure if it was going to go forward as planned.
But what about even a Vice President Mike Pence or even the House Speaker or something like that? None of these people.
It's a great question, and Donald Trump really never showed an interest in coming. I think in the end, even if he had planned to come, events would have overtaken with what's happening this week with Syria, and he's meeting with the Chinese president, but he really just did not show an interest, and because of his lack of interest in coming, he did not send his vice president. He did not ask Paul Ryan to come.
And that is our Week in Review. Our thanks to our news reviewers. I'm Nick Haynes. From all of us at KCPT, thanks for spending part of your weekend with us.